This is April 2004, and I'm Pastor Russ Porcella. I'm delighted to be sitting with Bob Jones in his own living room and inquiring of him of the things that God has shown him regarding Russia and the former Soviet Union. So Bob, I would like to begin there. Could you please begin by saying what were the first things God showed you about Russia and the former Soviet Union?
Well, that would have been the early 80s. And he began to show me that he was going to change the Soviet Union. So at different times I've went to people and I've told them that I see the Lord starting you in a ministry in the Soviet Union, and they would begin to pray about it, and they wound up in the Soviet Union at different times. And then he began to tell me that he was going to begin the most powerful work, the greatest awakening of all time would be in the Soviet Union. And to go and ask the churches to begin to prepare for it. He said that there would be 4 nations that would be an open door to the Soviet Union. And a 5th nation that would happen, which would be Sweden. There'd be awakening in Sweden, but also Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland would be open doors into the Russias. He began to also show me that as Israel went into captivity, the Babylonian captivity for 70 years, so would the Russian captivity be for exactly 70 years. And it was.
So far, Bob, in our journey with you regarding the things God has shown you about Russia, the $1 million offering had not yet been taken. Can you tell us about that?
Everything I'm speaking is still 1980s, and so, well, before that in 86, 87, I don't remember the exact date, the Lord showed me that He was going to bring over $1 million in one great offering to go into Russia. And that it would be a key time that Russia would need it. And he showed me, he said, I'm going to have a millionaire call you today. Had a garden back here in Kansas City. I always went out and dug in it. And he said, I'm going to start a work that will raise up a beginning of the things what I want to do in Russia. So I was told to go dig in a place, and I dug up a lot of other articles in my garden out there. And I went out and I dug that day, and I dug up an old toy down about 2 foot. I never dug that deep before, but I was told where to dig. I did, and it was a bus, Eagle Coastline. And so as I dug that up and looking at it, I saw that there was a long bus, and it was a cast iron bus. And I'd never seen anything like it before. It was only made in one edition. It was 1923. And the bus was still intact. And he said, Noel Alexander and a lot of the other brothers there in Kansas City are going to be keys in this thing. So I dug that bus up, and I was told that I was to give it to Noel Alexander. The Lord is going to give him $1,000 right away, out of nowhere. And the Lord was going to put another thousand with that, which is $1 million. And Viola come outside and said, there's a man who wants to talk to you on the phone. So I went in, and it was John DeLorean.
The car manufacturer?
The car manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And he was calling me up to thank me because I'd give him a prophecy that he thought was really too hard. I told him that he had been ducked 3 times into Jordan, and the Lord's going to duck him 4 more times. That he'd gone through 3 trials, he's going to go through 4 more. And he didn't like that, but 3 months later, when the 4th trial started, they came to him and told him, he said, that man warned you, and he said, oh, that he did. I've only got 3 to go. when John DeLorean went through the last trial, he called me and he said, Bob, I want to thank you for giving me that prophecy. If you hadn't have given it to me, I wouldn't have made it.
Wow.
And the Lord is saying, I am going to begin to finance a really powerful work in Russia. Everything I'm speaking is still 1980s, and so he began to speak to me, and I began to bring a word back there in the late 80s about the Lord was negotiating the release of the Russian Jews to where that there'd be an open door for them. And he was also negotiating the release of Christians. I saw Christians were literally like behind Bob Warren and the Russians, the Russian Jew too. And he said, I'm negotiating the release. And he said, I'm going to start it by bringing out 50,000 Christians to where they can get the right doctrine. I'm going to send them to the United States and other places. And I'm going to release 50,000 Jews right away. I'm negotiating it. And the wall's going to come down. And so in 89, in the Shepherd Rod, I was bringing some words about the walls coming down. And the Berlin Wall fell in 89. Also, the ability to come out of Russia began to come in 89. 89 was a key date.
So far, Bob, in our journey with you regarding the things God has shown you about Russia, the $1 million offering had not yet been taken. Can you tell us about that?
And then in, I believe it's 91, the Lord began to speak to us again, 1991, really strong about Russia again. And about $1 million, 1,000 thousands, him bringing in for missionary into Russia. And so the leader here in Kansas City asked me to come over and meet a man, which I'd already met a long time ago, Terry Law. So in Kansas City, we decided that this was the man we took up the offering for.
Was for Terry Law?
Yeah, for Terry Law. For Terry Law said he could get Bibles into Russia. It was, the walls had just come down. He could get Bibles in. He could get tapes in. He could get praise tapes in. He had an avenue to where they wouldn't stop him. They'd just let him come in there. And then he could get them printed cheaper than any place else in the country. And we asked him about it, and he said, oh, yes, I'll bring them in there and distribute them for you. And so we had a conference in Kansas City in 91. And Terry Law come, and they decided they were going to try the Lord, I guess. So they're going to take it up, if I remember right, on Tuesday morning service. And they were, I don't remember, I think there's 4,000 or 5,000 people there. So they took up an offering on the worst time you could take it up. And it was 1,400,000. And we gave every bit of it to Terry Law. There was no cutting back on any of it. It all went to him. He put it all in tapes and in transportation, and he distributed all over Russia. And then there was another man that came at this time that we were really getting behind, Bob Weiner. And Bob Weiner went over in Russia, and he awesomely impacted Russia at that time. Mm-hmm. He began to teach the youth, and the youth began to teach others, to where large churches began to form over in there. Abner Bosky, all of them went in there. I told Abner, he wanted to go back to Israel. I told him, no, Israel is in Russia. The Israel that you're going to be able to lead to the Lord's in Russia. So him and some other men went over, and they had one meeting where 10,000 of them come to the Lord, and another meeting where there's 30,000 come to the Lord. Mm-hmm. So they had some really powerful meetings over in the early 90s. And a tremendous amount of people came to the Lord.
And so going back to the bus incident and the $1,000 and Noel Alexander, I think you said Noel Alexander.
The Lord, he got 1,000 within 2 or 3 days from that time, that he never knew what it was. So he gave that 1,000 to the work.
And then there was the $1 million offering.
It was 1,400,000
which was given and
to Terry Law.
to Terry Law.
Went right into Russia. I think 6 months after they'd fallen, or just after that, it was like an avenue that went in there.
Okay.
So then
And
Abner Bosky and all those, I told them the Russian Jew is the one that's going to get saved.
If they were faithful in doing that, giving the 1,000, giving away,
You must give it all.
Yes, giving away the 1,400,000 that God would multiply it by 1,000, resulting in a 1 billion person harvest.
Yeah, and for every dollar they give would be a soul.
So that's like a billion, 400 million people.
Well, the first thing was 1,400,000. So that meant that there would be 1,400,000 Russians come to the Lord right away. And
I
so
see.
I'd say
Okay.
they did. I would say that was really rich just after that. Bob Weiner and some of those others.
Oh, they had massive crusades.
Yeah, they had massive, and there was massive evangelism and salvation. And that was only the beginning. I began to hear prophecies about the door to Russia was going to close. That the government in Russia was going to clamp down and make it where Christians couldn't get in and all this kind of stuff. And that the Red Army was going to rebuild and come out of Moscow to attack the world and start the Third World War. And these are prophecies I heard over and over. I couldn't figure how they would fit in to the things that he told me before about 7 years of captivity. 70 years, rather, to where the Russian people were captured for 70 years.
Can you tell us exactly how God showed you that? Did he show you a picture? Did he reveal it to your spirit? How actually did God reveal it to you?
Well, it was just like they were in the Babylonian captivity. He just kept showing me different visions throughout the years of it. And so, I think it was 88 or 89, there was a conference in Kansas City and so there was a man came, and his name was John Connors. And John Connors, I believe I had a vision of him, and I told him that he would be a key of going into the Russias. And I found out that he was from Estonia. And I told him, you'll go back to Estonia and the Lord's going to give you the best building in Estonia. And I'm really confused on it because I saw a 3-story building he's going to give you, but I also saw a 5-story building, and I can't figure it out. I can only tell you that it's by the ocean. I had a vision, and in it, the Lord said, there's a man that lives the first city south of Los Angeles. He'll call you tomorrow to confirm everything I'm going to tell you. And I saw a Red Army angel general. He was an angel over the Russias. He was a red, the top, he was the captain of the host in Russia. And the Lord was standing with him. That captain of the host, that Russian angel of God, he was totally red. I mean, he was like blood. And he'll have the power of blood. And he was like blood and fire.
When you say that, are your thoughts the blood of Jesus, the blood of martyrdom, or both?
I felt that he was fire and blood, the blood of Christ, that would, all the power of the blood. He has the power of the blood. A strange thing. The Lord, when I was really doubting him the worst, the Lord would just nod that he was right. The Lord didn't speak to me. He stood beside him. He was one very, very powerful angel.
You've seen this angel on more than one occasion?
Nope.
Or
That's the last time I've ever seen him.
was this a vision or a dream or an experience, or you were there?
I was there. This Red Army, I've often thought, who was he? I've saw large angels before at different times. I saw Gabriel 3 times and Michael once in my life.
And this angel, compared to them, was of similar stature?
Of similar authority. So I think he's an archangel. By the way, there's 7 archangels instead of 1. I believe he's an archangel over Russia. And this man brought me a white piece of paper like that. And he said, would you be interested in joining the Russian army of God?
Said that to you?
Yeah. And I said, no, because the door to Russia is going to close. He said, you're a liar.
Who said you were a liar?
This angel. And I looked at the Lord, and the Lord nodded that I was deceived. And I said, Russia's going to re-equip, and it's going to attack the South. And this angel said, that's right. But did you ever see what the army was? I said, it's a Red Army. And he said, yeah, but look. And behind them was a red cross. They're going to carry the cross south into the Muslim nations, into Europe. And he said, some of the greatest evangelists in the world will come out of Russia. And in the last days, it will not be the door to Russia that closes, it'll be the door to the United States that closes, and Russia will send evangelists to the United States in the last days. And I said, this is totally different than anything that I've ever heard prophesied. And this angel said, a lot of American prophets have prophesied patriotism instead of truth. And I said, has there been any prophecies that prophesied this? He said, yes, before 1910. And we'll begin to send you literature right away of these prophecies. And so one of the main prophecies that come was from a man by the name of Hudson Taylor.
Did the angel tell you the Hudson Taylor prophecy was true?
No. I was telling him that I really don't believe what you're telling me. Because if this is going to happen, there'd be a past revelation about it. And he says, you will get it. In the next 3 months, I will give you all kind of revelation on what true prophets spoke. And one of the first things, in fact, in my mail the next day was Hudson Taylor's prophecy.
What you're saying is that when that angel spoke to you,
An angel said he would send me the literature. And that's all I got for 3 months.
and the Hudson Taylor one was
The first.
And it came how quickly after that angel spoke to you?
The next day.
So you had, and who
To
did you,
me, it's the truth. Well, a lot of that missionary people, when they don't believe in that kind of stuff, they'd erase it, wouldn't they? And as far as I'm concerned, Hudson Taylor's prophecy was right. Because that angel said he'd send it to me, and that's the first one he sent me.
the next day?
It was in the mail.
Was it in a letter, like, I mean, a person? Did they explain why they were sending it to you?
They just said, it was a woman, I'm told to send you this. So that thing was already set up. Well, another one was from a Russian in Israel. I forget what her name was. She was like a mother. She had heard the Russian priest prophesying what would take place in Russia. All of this was about the 70 years, too, of the Babylonian captivity, where Russia would go into it in the 70 years. So it would end in 89. It started back there in the First World War, and the 70 years is up in 89 when the fences come down. And I was saying, well, this is totally different than anything I've ever heard prophesied. And he said, these are not true prophecies that they prophesied this patriotism. And they figured out that Russia, but there will be a Third World War, and it will come out of some of the lower Muslim nations. But before that will come one of the greatest awakenings you've ever seen among youth in Russia. And the youth in Russia, when they get a hold of the gifts, they have nothing else that excites them. They'll totally spend their time and their energy to promote the gospel. And I said, well, I'm going to have to look this over. And he said, well, if it's true, if this prophecy is true, there'll be a tragedy right away in Oklahoma City. The building will blow up. And this man that is the first city south of Los Angeles, I want you to give him a word for me. I want you to tell him, I'm in this thing. This blessing is from me. I'm behind it. So that night about, I don't remember exactly when, but the next night in the evening, a man called me. And he said, Bob, my name is John Connors. And you gave me a word 2 years ago about I was to go back to Estonia and the Lord would give me a building. And it would be the best building in Estonia. I went back there and probably cost me $3,500. I don't know what cost him that much. But it was 3 stories on the land side and 5 stories on the ocean side, right where you said it was. And we're training ministers right now to go into the rushes. And Bob, I really need a word. And you've always been there before. And 2 years ago, you gave me this word. It was exact. And I said, do you live the first city south of Los Angeles? He said, yes. It's Torrance. I said, I don't understand it, but the Lord said, I'm in this thing. I am blessing you. This is a blessing. This is me. It's okay. And boy, it got quiet, and I heard like 2 voices on the line. Then he said, a year ago, my wife died. And I've gone through hell for a year. And the other day in a conference in Dallas, I looked over the side, and there was a woman that turned around and looked at me. And the Lord spoke to me and said, this is your new wife. And as the Lord told him that, she jumped up and ran over to him and said, I'm your new wife. And they said, we just don't know how to trust this kind of thing. I know a man I'll call tomorrow. If this is God, he'll tell me. Next thing after that is that explosion in Oklahoma City, where that federal building blew up. And so I knew then that he was talking about the army that's going to come out of the Russias will be a red Christian army, and it'll go throughout the world. And I know that one of the main things he was saying, and the main thing that this Russian army of God wanted me, is to begin to mentor revelation gifts. For once they get the revelation, there's nothing that can stop them. But once the Russian youth are touched, they catch fire. This army is a fire army. I know that the mafia and a lot of things like that rule Russia now. They'll get saved. For a lot of it, they're in there because mostly in the Russias now, there's no hope. And there's no hope for youth. And so he showed me that in the Russias, that which is in the earth in Russia hasn't even been touched. The chemicals, the oil, the value, all of that hadn't been touched. The Ukraine, none of that has really been properly handled. And the Ukraine is when the first fires start. But it explodes in every direction. And the Russian army of God is recruiting people now. So this has been going on since '89. So I believe he's progressively been working this. And I believe that what we see here is what he's going to export to Russia. And begin to touch the youth in Russia. And this is why that he's bringing out youth. Every place I'm going now, it's like youth are awakening. The worst thing that we can do with what the Lord is doing with youth is look at the package. And it's time that the Russian army of God really fill their ranks. And it doesn't take that much to excite them. All you got to do is have the spirit of truth in you. I've seen those come and just tell them one truth about themselves, and man, they don't doubt like the United States. They not overdosed on prophecy. I've seen when they come, just tell them a thing or one dream you've had concerning them, and they recognize the truth. They go from there.
Is there anything else that angel said to you who you saw with the Lord?
He said, I will show you, and I will bring the people to you. And I'm going to recruit an army in Russia that will touch the entire world. Disciples will touch every corner of the earth.
That's what the angel said to you, who was standing with Jesus, who told you when you said that there was a military army coming out of Russia, that you were a liar and that it was political?
American prophets have prophesied patriotism, and they prophesied it to the best for our good. But Russia is getting ready to awake. And the things that he told me that to confirm it, they've all happened right now. This thing with Terry Nichols, and I think, and everything else is still a saying, still a preparation. Opening of the door, I believe that door is getting wider and wider all the time.
When was it that you actually saw this angel and the Lord, the angel over Russia, the archangel? When was that?
A few months before Oklahoma City.
But the Oklahoma City bombing was one of the confirmations that God gave you.
It'll explode, and John Connor called me the next day. So it was a confirmation to me. Not much of the church back there had any belief on these things at all. So, but that army, I saw him. Now with Bill Lynch and those, I think they left in '89 to go to Russia. And a lot of the others.
You mentioned when we had lunch several weeks ago that you saw there is a single angel over Lithuania.
Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland.
Can you tell me
Estonia.
that experience, how that happened, and what you heard?
The angel spoke to me, and I guess at one time they were all real close. There's one angel in there, and he's the angel of the door. And he said, I'm going to use these people again, and they'll keep a door open to the Russias. It'll be open both ways. I'm also going to awaken those in Sweden. So Sweden, I expect to see a little like a rebellion against wickedness in Sweden. As I believe you're getting ready to see a rebellion against wickedness in the United States. So this angel I saw there was nowhere close to the authority of the Red Army.
Did the angel over, what you say, my words, the lesser angel than the one over Russia, the angel over Lithuania and Estonia and so on, did he speak to you? Do you remember what he said?
That he was going to start a work there, and that at different times he'd bring people from those to tell them to get ready to join in with him, that they would be part of the army, that their youth in there would be part of the Russian army. And so it would be like there would be a joining in there. So those are the Christians in Sweden, in these 4 nations. All of this would be part of what this Red Russian army is going to do. It'll be one of the most powerful movements. It'll be an end-time army of bringing 1 billion souls to the Lord, youth. 1 billion. And I saw this Russian army, this Red Army. I saw it go right in with the Muslims. And they begin to touch Muslim youth. You know, they had the revelation. They knew what to do. And they weren't afraid. I mean, all their life it seemed like they'd been in fear, but they were no longer in fear. And they were without number. The greatest awakening of all time will take place in Russia. And so many things started in '89, 15 years ago. The walls come down, which the United States had been preparing for the Third World War, and Russia was devastated overnight. We as a nation believe lies so easily, and we run at every fear.
Now, a few minutes ago, you were starting down a path where you were saying you were beginning to hear people say that the door to Russia was going to close.
That's what they were prophesying. That Russia, back there in '89, '90, they were saying, we better get the gospel in now because it's going to close. Mm-hmm. And that's not what he told me. That door will always be open in there.
That when it opened after 70 years, it would stay.
It will stay open. No matter what you say, it's going to stay open in Russia. And those that have been plowing over have been plowing hard ground, but they've been, sooner or later, there'll be an awesome harvest. Also, the United States was the giver of it. So we'll have bread coming back on the water too. In other words, our main job on all of this was to support what was going to Russia. So the churches have over and over. Mm-hmm. And they are now. And that's what we're to do, is we're to equip what's going to raise up there. We must. That's our grace.
Now, has God spoken that to you? When and how did that happen?
Well, way back there in the first, he began to speak to me when I went to Winnipeg, Canada, and saying, Winnipeg is going to be a place where Jews can come when they come out. And they'll begin to come into Winnipeg. Then he's begun to send me into the Northwest. And I begin to tell the people in the churches in Northwest and California on up in Canada, your main calling and your main avenue in the last days, get ready to go to Russia. So there's all the way across there in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Canada. There's people that's going into Russia now all the time. And just like y'all, they're going into different places. And they're sowing all the time. But I've always told them, the main thing that will happen is you'll go there and you'll raise up an army. a Christian army. And that what you want to do now is sow seeds in there.
And you use the term door opener that for Lithuania, Estonia, and so on.
It's a door. That angel there is nothing but a door to God's purpose in Russia. And Sweden in some way will be responsible for bringing it in.
Has God given you any insight into the timetable? Like, how far away are we from the release of this massive army?
We're in the 7th day. It started on the 7th day. It's already started. The thing builds until it explodes. The 7th day was September the 18th of 91. We're in the 7th day now. This will take place in the 7th day. Some of this stuff goes back into the early 70s. So there's been a preparation in there, and I could never understand it because I saw a purpose in Russia. But all these others saying, the door is going to close. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yes.
Well, we can hear those lies and get them set into our mind as truth. So some of these prophecies, I just took it as truth. Well, they weren't. And some of the greatest evangelists that the world's ever seen will come out of Russia.